Okay. Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Two Geezers, One Care Plan. I'm Mark Turton.
And I'm Damon Habin.
We both work in Lincolnshire in adult social care. And like I said, this is the fourth offering. We do have a bit of an apology. We were supposed to be having a guest, but to secure the guest, we initially did. We started a recording, but unfortunately we had to stop the recording because the guest had serious internet issues. But we hopefully that guest will be with us in June. At the present moment, it's just to it's all about diaries. I think the word isn't, Damon. It's to secure diaries, and we'll hopefully that she was going to be with us for this session. But unfortunately, she's triple booked into a national call which she has to take this afternoon. So she sends her apologies, but hopefully we will get it in. We've also secured later on this year a gentleman who is used to be a Radio Lincolnshire News, a DJ or a presenter, Melvin Pryor. Melvin does lots of social media, does a lot of commercial work, and he supported recently Lincolnshire Care Awards as the compare, but he's also got a foot in social care, both as an unpaid carer, but he's got family members who work within social care as well. And I had a quick chat to Mervyn Pryor, on the at the Care Awards, and I said, would you be interested? And he said 100% yes. So we'll hopefully get a date for that, but that'll probably be late summer, early autumn. If you've never been to Two Geezers and met us before, Two Geezers and One Care Plan, the whole concept of this came about. I used to do a LinkedIn blog where I used to come up with 2 questions and a tip, and that ran for 12 months and got quite a lot of traction in the groups I had and the groups Damon had. Damon was a big supporter of it. And me and Damon one day was just chatting, said, well, why don't we take this to the next level? And hopefully this is the next level. For those who've already joined us on this little voyage we're on, a big thank you. I did speak to someone, Damon, the other day. Apparently, if we get something like 10,000 views, we get sponsorship. I don't know what that looks like, or we get adverts. But you've got to have so many. The other thing as well, we're now putting all these videos onto our YouTube account, which is LinCA TV, and they're available. And they're also available in commentary voice as well. So without seeing me and Damon, you can hear me and Damon as well. Yeah. Let's just get cracking. So the idea is that I'll have a question, and then Damon will come with a question, and we'll go through that. And it's me interviewing Damon. Damon interviews me. So my question is to you, Damon. What does change look like, and how can we manage it the best?
Yeah. I've had a good thing about this question this morning. And what I wanted to do was flip it around and look at the second bit first, which is how hard is it to manage? And outside of work, if we look at both the football teams we support, over the last few years, there's been a lot of stuff happening that we probably haven't liked, certainly haven't celebrated, but those changes, as a football fan, you've got 2 choices. You either put up with it. I mean, you've got a third choice. You can join supporter groups and you can try and have that voice. But let's be honest, unless we can get a big enough group together to buy our, sort of teams, the voice isn't really going to be listened to. And I think, well, so we either stop supporting the team or we have to tolerate and put up with it. But if we take that back to work, I think, when we see changes coming in, sometimes we can sort of be, and I see it a lot with with the way that social care has gone digital. A lot of people are, we've done it pen and paper. That's how we want to do it. We don't want to change. We don't like change. We've done it for 20, 30, 40 years. But then people become open to it and adopt new solutions. Some still don't. Some still do what they do. And I think, me personally, it's being open to that change, but also questioning it when you need to question it and say, well, I'm happy with most of it, but that little bit, not so sure about. But going back to the first bit, what does it look like? Well, I think that change should look positive. And it can come in many different forms, can't it? But it should be a positive thing, and not to be seen as a negative. Because sometimes we were just talking before we started this podcast about something, and you could jump onto it and think, well, that's a bit of a negative. Why has that happened? And it's like, well, it's not a negative. There's been a collective decision that's been made, and the positive thing is the positive thing, and you have to work from that and go from it. I don't know what your thoughts are.
You made some really good points, because I look at it, you've got to look at it as like a flipping a coin scenario, in my view. When you look at change, I think change has to be done for a reason, but it's the rhyme and reason why you want to be part of change. So I've been in places both in professional and private life where change has occurred, and it's as though you're just getting on the plane and you don't know why you're getting on the plane, but someone says, well, when you get off, it's going to be really warm and really hot, and you'll love it. And you get on thinking, okay, I trust these people, they're the decision makers, but when I get there, you still question why. And I think the example about football is quite interesting, because for those who don't know Damon and mine's colours, we're both sport teams with blue with a bit of white in them. My team's sort of had the worst season in their historical life, in one would argue, is that they've only won 2 games all season, but they've come out of, they've been in administration for most of that season, and their changes, they've got a new owner, and the new owner, and it's something I want to really talk about, the new owners within coming in has spoken and communicated more to the fan base than the previous owner had done for the previous 8 years. And I think there's something in that. It's just, so if we have change, it has to be communicated in a way that everyone understands why. So, and I want to put this in a parallel to health and social care.
Yeah.
The biggest change I see currently in this sphere, well, there's 2 changes. There's the results of the Casey Commission, which will have a major bearing in social care.
Yeah.
But also there's the change which West Streeter has brought in about the makeup of the ICBs. So it's interesting. I co-chair on the National Workforce Group, which are brought together by people who work in adult social care in workforce. And I was due to, I'm chairing the meeting in November. And I was talking to one of my colleagues who sets it all up in the agenda, and she says, what do you want to talk about, Mark? And I just said to her, well, I want to talk about what has happened to co-production based on we're getting larger ICBs.
Yeah.
So, for instance, in where we are based in Lincolnshire, our ICB is a cluster with Nottinghamshire and Derbyshire. And in that sense, that the hierarchy currently of the ICB is predominantly going to come from Nottinghamshire. So the CAOs from Nottinghamshire, the chairs from Nottinghamshire, and out of the executive directors, 90% of them have come from the Nottingham area. Yeah. And what that looks like for someone working within Lincolnshire means that Lincolnshire's historically, we've done co-production really well. We've talked about co-production in previous calls, but this is a big change, because ultimately, if you get this cluster is going to come this big organisation, and until they themselves know what change is like, the little people like us working in social care are going to be left with a tsunami effect thereafter. And the fear at the moment is that those who actually work in the ICB have not been told what it's going to look like. Some of them are still applying for jobs. And so therefore their change is that some of them says, well, do I want to be there? And I know they've had a substantial amount of people who have applied for redundancies. And that in itself is a question to ask for around change. But going back to you made a point over, is that the fact is that you've got to do change for the right reason. But you've got, in my view, you've got to do it in the base of how do you communicate that, and how do you convince those skeptics who within your teams or within the processes of where you work on the spheres of what you work around to understand this is for a reason.
Yeah. And I think the key word is communication, isn't it? It's if you get that right, if you explain things, if you set out an agenda that clearly shows this is where we are and this is a journey we want to take. And it doesn't always have to have a final destination. As long as we know where we're heading towards, it might at this stage just be Europe. And it might then end up being, well, we're going to end up in Germany. Well, that's fine. As long as we know that we're heading there. And sometimes we head up in Florida and you think, well, we're heading for Europe. We're the other side of the world. What happened? But that's because sometimes changes will change as we're going along.
Because I'm thinking this is logical ways that how much change is happening currently to the to social care and the social care market. So we've talked about the ICB, haven't we?
Yeah.
We've talked about the commission, but we haven't talked about much about CQC.
No.
So as the regulator for social care, we're very fortunate. We had nearly 100 providers in Lincolnshire speaking with CQC this last week, and one of the big elements was about that day was there was a big discussion about there's a consultation taking place on literally the assessment framework in sense, and this is just me personally, and rather than the company I work for, but it's on the 9th draft. And we're into a consultation period of probably, this consultation period has been going on now probably for a good 6 months. But to have 9 drafts shows you the amount of change which people are perceiving is needed. And I think it would be false of us to criticise CQC and what they did or have done in the past. But I see it's the old bit, is your glass half full or half empty? I see the changes which CQC are looking to do is quite positive.
Yep.
I am sceptical about the timescales needed. I am sceptical about the real communication, and it goes back to your point about communication, that the care providers are willing to be part of the consultation.
Yeah.
Because I'm a big believer now, if you don't talk and consult, you don't influence change. I'm thinking, I think the point you made about digital is a really, really interesting point, Damon. I'll be interested in what your thoughts about as that challenge which you have been centre and the heart of within these Midlands, and the journey which you've been on to assist that change. So what's it been like for you?
I think it's been amazing, and to see how social care providers have opened their arms to this and jumped on board. The flip side is and it's not having a dig at the NHS, but it's now we've got all of this data being collected, and I can't speak for providers, but I'd like to think that their care plans are better in some ways now that they have gone digitized because of what can be collected and how the processes have been made simpler. And from my days having done care plans, they could all merge into the same document, dependent. It didn't matter who was being looked after; they all became the same, and it became a very standardized document that wasn't person-centered. And that's the key thing, isn't it, now for modern care plans? But now we've got all of this data, and we keep knocking on doors to say, we've got this data. How can we share it with other people, i.e., the NHS, GPs? I know that there is GP Connect, which will do some of that sharing, but it's very slow to get anything sort of organised or put in place to have those sharing agreements and the way that it's done, and it always feels a little bit like, well, we're happy to have that data, but we don't want to give you any of ours, and if we do give it, it's on a very restricted and locked down sense, and I understand that. I wouldn't want my bank to be giving out my details to anybody just because it makes sense. It's got to go through. And this is the key thing. So I've been keeping a little eye on the data and how GPs want to have control of data. And I like this new focus, which is where it should be, which is it's actually your data is your data, my data is my data. It's the person's data and nobody else's, and it's who they want to share it with.
I'm laughing because recently me, you, and a colleague of ours went to the care show, didn't we?
Yep.
And we went on a wonderful underground way to get to the Excel Centre.
Yep.
And of which, when we got on the overtown, which what was it's the
DLR.
Yeah, the DLR route into the Excel. So we get up, all three of us get on, and this is an example, folks, about change. There's a guy there who's not, he's in a uniform as such, but he's got a key. And the key is that he literally puts it into the lock mechanism of the door. Yeah. So we want to, this first time we see something like that. And then what he proceeds to is to start asking people in the carriage next to us for tickets. Now, we've already purchased our tickets by tap and go methods, going through. And me and Damon looked at each other going, tickets? So tickets, it was like it's a double take of it. And so we just said to the guy when he came to us, have you got your tickets? He says, no, he says, all you need, I need is your card. And we gladly give our card over. But the other guy who was with us said, I'm assure you working. What's he said? Something he said, what's it he said?
Yes, the key
are
on
you
the uniform.
Real? Yeah, are you kosher?
Yeah.
Because the fact is that we were so relaxed about the fact that the perception is that, okay, if he's got a key, he must work for them. Because the other guy was with says he didn't see that process. His perception is that this person's after my data. He's going to scam me. And of course, we got on the other. First thing is to check his phone. I wanted to see his bank's not being.
Yeah, he'd not lost all of his money.
But that's an example of change where we've accepted change and that other person is questioning change. And I think if we put that into the concepts of the mechanics of which we do within health social care, can I just take us back 6 years to COVID? Yeah. I think during COVID, the COVID was a revolution time for social care. Because digitally wise, it meant that we couldn't do knock on the door communication. It had to be digitally done through technology.
Yeah.
And in that period, I say, of 12 months, we literally went from zero probably to 50, 60% digitally comfortable.
Yeah.
But why has it took us 5 further years to go another 10%? And that's a change thing, isn't it?
It is.
So what is the barrier for change? Why are people happy I'm going to, for you, Damon, do you think people are happy in crisis to do change, but actually when crisis is over and rationale comes back into the norm, they literally throw the anchor out and slows everything down, and it seems like we drag.
I think with COVID, I think it just put everything into a different perspective, doesn't it? It was, I think we spoke about this before, I was quite prepared to don my PPE and get back out there and do some hands-on care, because there was no way that we'd be able to deliver training and then after a quick get together, we discussed it. We worked out a way how we could deliver that training in a safe and ethical way, and we did that. And now that that's gone, I think one of the issues, and we saw it with the digital social care records, is when there was some funding and taking my nice hat off, there wasn't enough funding. Providers who were already having a difficult time in some aspects, or in a lot of aspects, still had to put up a lot of funding, which they're still having to pay. Digital social care records aren't free; they're paying for that now and forever, evermore. I think there's a lot of technology out there that providers could adopt that would make a huge saving to the NHS and to councils by keeping people in their own homes for a lot longer, reducing. It goes back to the 3 pillars of the 10-year NHS plan. Social care could do so much to support that, but it comes at a cost. And I think right now that those changes, one of the biggest things stopping those changes is the fact that providers potentially can't afford to implement something that would have massive benefits, not just cost saving or time saving, but massive benefits to the people that are being supported and those delivering the support.
So just to sort of close this question to the
Yeah.
end, my supplementary question to you is change healthy then?
I think so. And you can't stay stagnant, can you? If we look back through history of things that have failed that were once successful, it's because they stayed stagnant, and you've got to keep moving with it. So changes, I don't want to quote, I think it's Thanos, but change is inevitable. You have to change, you have to keep moving, because that's just the most logical way, isn't it? It's and not everything's ever going to be successful, so you're going to have failures along the way, but that you just then change again, and you keep evolving and improving. That's personally, like we mentioned, families, but also work, and the people we support. I look at the way that within the digital team, how we've evolved in the 4 years that I've been here. It's just a simple spreadsheet that me and my colleague Alistair developed. Every year we've amended and updated that, and the process that we do it, and how we collect the data and what we do with the data. And every year we look back and we think, well, that was amazing. How are we going to change this for the next year to keep us on top and moving forward and driving it forward? So that's my closing thoughts on it. What about yourself?
I agree 100%. I think if we had a status quo stagnation, everyone gets comfortable.
Yep.
And when everyone gets comfortable, we take off the eye off the ball of progression and quality. And in my own thoughts, if we don't look to improve and change different things, quality dips.
Yeah.
Because people start saying, we get this scenario. I remember when I went to the NHS. One of the arguments was one of the big changes we had brought in was around staffing ratios. And at the time, I was a charge nurse on a 32-bedded ward. We had a staffing ratio of 3 RGNs in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, and 2 on night, supplemented by 3 nursing assistants, 2 in the afternoon and 2 at night. And overnight, we will increase that to 5 RGNs in the morning, 3 in the evening, and remain the 2 at night. But we had 3 more nursing assistants in the morning, 2 more in the 3 in the evening, and we had 3 on night. And what suddenly that change did is that people stopped doing what they were doing. And it got this us and them scenario. Oh, I'm not doing all that because that nurse is over there, therefore that nurse is looking after that. And before we used to help each other.
Yeah.
And therefore a simple ward was split into 3, but it was 3 separate wards in one way. And I found it sometimes, in fact, I found it difficult at the beginning to manage that equilibrium, in the sense that how do we bring it back. And I used to speak to my senior team and say, look, it's all up. I want you to understand, if someone wants help, they get help. It doesn't matter if it's allocated to you today, you're there to help. So, but that goes back to old school. I can remember one of my old matrons who used to literally come onto the ward and demand to do a ward round, and you had to know every single patient, every single communication related to their pathways. And because she wants to make sure that if I knew that, she understands that the responsibility I could be given later on is that I'm not going to mess up because I'm looking at crossing the T's and dotting the I's. So I think change is it's very healthy, but I think I'm 100% behind you. If it's not communicated properly, it can cause quite a number of issues, which can potentially result in poor productivity and major problems around change and managing and sustaining it as well.
Yeah. Cool. So my question number 2, and there's some overlaps here, but it'd be good just to discuss it and have a look through it. How do we maintain focus on a task? And that could be an ongoing, for me, the DSPT, Digital Security Protection Toolkit, that's ongoing. It's been out there for 5+ years now. So that's a long-term task, but you also get shorter-term tasks. So yeah, how do we maintain focus on a task?
I'm a massive believer now in having metric-based KPIs.
Yeah.
So something which is very visual and agree that we have to meet a target. But to meet that target, there has to be a plan and a methodology to get to that target. It's not suddenly saying, right, I want to have, for instance, DSPT, I want to have 96% of all DSPT done across health, all elements of adult social care, and that's including home care and residential settings and community supported living.
Yeah.
When all those providers do it their own way and different ways.
Yeah.
What should be better is that saying, right then, what we were aiming for, can we have 96% of like nursing homes completed? Can we have, therefore, and accept that is a stage process? So let's do it for a 3-year process. So year 1 is going to be 80, year 2 is going to be 90, year 3 is 96. When it comes to other areas in our social care, and again using DSPT as this an example, is that where you've got a low starting point, I'm looking at home care.
Yeah.
You can't suddenly say, right, I want to get 96% of home care when you currently may have only got 20% of home care. But what you might say, right, this is, well, if we're going to put a lot of energy into getting our nursing homes and residential homes up to a suitable level, something has to give in the process. Unless you give me more resources, I ain't going to meet that objective.
Yeah.
But what I will say is that I will maintain that 20% and I'll put another 10% on, just to keep myself interested in the process. But meaning that when I reach my other year 2 target and the year 1 targets, I can put some resources in to move that up to 50%. So it grows exponential against the target. So therefore, eventually what happens, you'll get the perimeters get narrower and narrower and narrower, and it becomes an equal process. And I think having KPIs helps you do that. I have to say, going back, I did some, when I saw this, when we chatted earlier today and we said this as a question, I did some background reading about like what you do with what you do with my question, is that ultimately I look back and I've got some old journals which I scroll a lot of information down, and in it is the surprisingly KPIs I started doing personally myself probably about 15 years ago.
Yeah.
But they were set at a level where I probably was going to be difficult to achieve them. So in to answer that question is that I believe that for tasks and to achieve task and quality measures going forward, you've got to have a parameter process. It's got to be fair, it's got to be balanced, and it's got to be funded. Funded means therefore I've got the right resources. I've got and resources may not be headcounts. It's actually resources might be technology.
Yeah.
Elements like that, but of which I also believe to keep people on guard is that there has to be a regular supervision process put in, probably at a monthly level. Yeah. Until we can get something, until it stabilizes out and you think control and the person who sets the parameters in control, then you can actually review that process. So having regular discussions. Now, I'm going to shoot myself in the foot here, and I don't take this as an attack on anyone's processes, and especially those who work in health, and especially in the NHS. I do believe in social care, we do it better than our NHS colleagues, in the sense maybe because we're getting funding from a different sphere. Mm-hmm. And therefore we are aware of what funding we're getting, and we want to make value for money the core of our task process. And what I'm trying to get at is that I'm sure you're the same, Damon. We sit in a lot of cross health and social care and meetings. Yeah. And the joke behind the scenes is that NHS will do a meeting for a meeting's sake, because nothing gets agreed, because there's no major parameters of accountability of cost, which is quite alarming considering how much money is spent within the NHS and how much wastage is in the NHS. And just going back to the ICB element right at the beginning, maybe the new cluster ICB, there's going to be now accountability, financial accountability, to say if I'm going to invest in, for instance, social care, to do a project in social care, I want to see what KPIs, I want to see some return on value, I want to see some return on investment. More importantly, I want to see that invoice control, or I want to see resource and what the outcome of the resource is. So those are the things which are parameters to do. How do you maintain that? And I think that is down to having the right teams, having the right relationships. So I think you've got the right relationships, the person who sets the task. I think you've got to question what their vision is, and foremost their vision. One of the best learning processes I ever went to is when I worked for one of the large adult social care providers in one of my first jobs in adult social care. And I'm going back 20 years ago now. I had a wonderful director, operations director, sorry, a HR director. And he was very level-headed. He was very, okay, I've never ever heard him raise his voice to anyone, even if someone messed up, he did raise his voice. But what he used to do is, if he was doing a project, he used to call you into his office now and again to say, right then, Mark, right, can you tell me what you're doing and why you're doing it? And then you sit down and he said, right, can you just tell me again, what does this mean? What's that mean? And he literally critiqued you against what your objectives were. End of the day, he knew exactly what your objectives were, but he was just making sure that I knew where I was. And what it does, it reassured you, actually. He goes, that's fine. He says, I'm more than happy. And therefore, when he spoke about this project on my behalf, he was reassured that I was on ball with my projects. And therefore, I wasn't missing targets. I was processing them. And when he was able to talk to the trustees and the executive committees, he was able to say, right, we are here with 100% reassurance. And I think I've learned from that, and I've put that into the teams which I manage, is that I will question people, I will ask people, but I will, the word ask is an open-ended thing. I will question in a way that I'm trying to reassure them through me that I'm supporting them, but I'm making sure that what they are doing is right
Yeah.
for the right reason. What about yourself?
Well, I'm going to delve a little bit deeper with some of the bits you've mentioned there. How important do you find self-reflection?
I think self-reflection, see, it's interesting. I come from an old school in the sense that I'm a nurse from trade, so I've had clinical supervision in my life
Yeah.
for generations, literally from the day I started my nurse training of some kind of supervision. So I've always had peer supervision.
Yeah.
But where I had the nugget in the back pocket, my wife's a nurse. So I could talk about things confidentially, knowing that it won't go
Yeah.
anywhere else with my
Yeah.
wife, and my wife could do the same to me. Now, when I left the NHS and went into social care, there was a different sphere. And my wife, she still works within as a nurse, not in the NHS, but with a private organisation. And she comes across community-based issues and also issues related to people, general
Mm.
people, and the public. And that is where I feel there's the ability to have good peer conversations. It's also helpful if you've got people who line manage you who are willing to listen.
Yeah.
But I think there's a bit of listening which over the years I've got used to, rather than lead the conversation, allow that person to be the conversation and to have the role of have you thought about this? An ideas person. Have you thought doing it differently? Okay, I understand where you're going, but can you remember this A, B, and C is still to be delivered before you're talking about D? Does that make sense?
Yeah. And because I've gone a different tack to how I started off with this question, but one of the things I used to do as a trainer was a lot of self-reflection that I would then take to my line manager, and we'd look at it, look at how I felt the week went, what was good, what wasn't so good, and he would then explore. Well, okay, so yeah, completely agree there, but with what didn't go well, how could you, how could you do that better? What could you have done differently? And I think that helped with the focus on. So I'm just reflecting on. I was invited to do a bit of a talk at Nottingham Care Association's conference, which was a real privilege, and I went there. I could see that the talk before had overran. So I just spoke to the organizer and said I can speed mine up, and then did the classic of taking what I should have done was the 15 minutes down to 10. I did the 15 minutes down to 5, and just rapidly went through it. And on self-reflection, it was like I should have just paced myself and slowed it down, and taken the 10 rather than get it done in 5. And I can do that. We've done these podcasts now, and sometimes we think, well, okay, we need to speed this bit up. We've overrun on question 1, or sometimes we need to slow it down on question 2 because we did question 1 sort of too quickly, to try and meet those 16 minutes that we set aside. And I think sort of for me personally, to help me maintain the focus on what I'm doing, it is going to be a bit of reintegrating a bit of a self-reflective log of how, not weekly, but potentially monthly, just looking at where I am on each bit. Because like you sort of say, we can lose focus, and we can solely go on something and think, well, actually, I've not delivered on that. I need to make sure I deliver on that. But then not making snap decisions of, I better do that now, or somebody's just emailed, I better do that now. It is that sort of spread of all the tasks, and allocating the right amount of time to each task, and accepting the wins and working on the negatives.
So I think I've got a lot of empathy for what you have just spoke about, because it's difficult, especially when you've been asked to do something and it becomes a time constraint, and the time constraint changes at the last hour.
Yeah.
And I was talking to a group of managers last week about crisis management. and how difficult crisis management is to manage correctly, because crisis management just morphs into stress management if you don't be careful. And by stress management, then you go straight back into crisis management. And that's the element of lose control and I feel I'm out of my depth scenario. And that therefore leads you to stress management again. It's this, literally, it's a tennis game, but you're always under pressure. When I was at the care show this time, I went to a talk, and it was a really something. I like going around the care show just to meet people, as you know, but also I decided to go to one specific talk about how to just communicate with people better. One of the and this lady, this very senior person, this organisation was talking about a new principle, or a principle she's been using for a number of years, called sail and anchor. And the fact is that you talk to your teams about, okay, the sail element, what has made you fly, what has made you do things, what and why have they been successful, why have they pushed through the barriers, and then you discuss that. And they don't have to be, or it could be about personal things. You know, what's motivated you coming to work today? So, what is it making a big smile on your face? But then the anchor bit is, you know, why you're feeling down, what's causing your problems. And it could be, you know, your horse is unwell, or your football team's rubbish and lost again at the weekend, or whatever. There's things which means that it does sometimes affect inadvertently into your professional life. And I'm thinking, is this an opportunity? So I'm thinking, within my teams, do I bring this sail and anchor approach in, just as a bit of a nugget to change people's mindset to think, actually, let's think about success, because we're not very good at talking about success, and it's probably something I'll probably like to address in a future podcast. Is why is it we're very good at talking about failures and things which we do badly, but when we ask people what they're good at, they struggle to get 10 things, whereas they ask them what they're bad at, straight down 10 things. So before we just wrap up, in the sense that we've got to go into the last section, I'm interested about your conception of task management. And how do you support that element of growth, working with other people who could have an influence, who may not have influence?
I think it's important to take each task individually, and each person within the team individually, because we've all got our own strengths, which also means we've all got our own weaknesses. And it would be amazing, wouldn't it, if we had 10 tasks and all 10 tasks were just completed ahead of schedule and over the expected outcome. But unfortunately, that's not real life. And I think we've spoken about it before. Even if you're really confident in the person that you've set that task to, or yourself, if you don't monitor and keep an eye on it, like you mentioned your previous colleague when they sort of invited you in and had that chat, if you don't have that chat, if you don't keep an eye on it, if you don't keep regular updates coming in, then it's too late to adjust how that task is going, redirect the ship onto a better sort of path, and then it could be too far down one route. I think that it's that communication. It's even if you 100% trust somebody to be able to do that task, it's just keeping and supporting and celebrating where they're doing well and supporting where they need a bit of guidance. I
think it's got a really good point, that. I know how you work, Damon, so it's sound advice, but it's the advice probably which you keep it's like a mantra, isn't it? You work to standards, and you think, well, it's the old adage is like the parents' law. I always say that in working in social care, the parents' law, would you put, the quality of a service, would you put your parents into that quality of the service?
Yeah.
And it's the same, you can measure the same principles as your children's law. Would you allow your children to work in that service?
Yeah.
So the two are slightly different, but they're not. It's all about quality of a service.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think these questions sort of do mirror and parallel each other, and they sort of go together really nicely because, with change comes focus, with focus comes change. No, I've enjoyed both of these. Yeah.
All right then, Damon. Let's, before we start wrapping up, let's think about your top tip. Let's start with yours.
Top tip. Well, I did mention this before about it. It's Tom Hanks. So he did this top tip. I heard it on a film podcast that I listened to. And it was actually during COVID time. But it's a simple phrase: "This too shall pass." So you're having a bad day at work, or something's not going right at home. Something's bad in your personal life. Just need to remember that this too shall pass. Bad things happen, and they will come and they will go. But we also need to remember that we're on top of the world when we've smashed targets, when we're doing exceedingly well. This too shall also pass. We're at a brief moment in time, good or bad, and it sort of mirrors your last top tip. There's still tomorrow, and maybe there is some sort of. So I've looked back through the top tips. I'm very conscious, even though we're only on the fourth podcast, I should say, that we don't repeat, the one we did in our first one. But I do like that. It's just that gentle reminder that, yep, it doesn't matter how bad today is, it will get better. But be careful. I know we just spoke about success, and we're very shy sometimes about that. But working with my step-lad, great lad. He's doing really, really well in many things, especially school, but he's also quite the sportsman. But it's teaching him that he needs to be humble as well, because, you can be on top of the world in whatever thing you're doing. But if you go out this weekend and have a bad day, you can get smashed by the lowest seed, which will feel embarrassing. But do you know what? It doesn't matter. Go out next weekend, you might beat the top seed. It's all, seize the day. But that's my top tip. This too shall pass. What about yours, Mark?
Well, I had to do a bit of research because I found the tip, and then I didn't know who the person was who wrote it. So it's a gentleman called Jeff Hoffman. Yep. And Jeff Hoffman, for the listeners who doesn't know who Jeff Hoffman is, there'll be a prize if you knew who he was before I tell you. Jeff Hoffman is the founder of Booking.com, and and I think this was a really good tip based on what we've had for the previous 4, but where we could potentially go for the next 4. So Jeff Hoffman's tip is surround yourself with people who are smarter than yourself. And I think what he's getting at is that success is great, but actually success comes not from one person. Nope. It comes from ideas brought on by multiple people who actually, at that 1 second of life, is smarter than anyone else because they've thought of the idea. But then suddenly someone takes that idea and expands it further. So that person whose idea it was, who's been smart, has been outsmarted by someone else. And then the idea of the leader of that may not be the person who's the smartest, but actually their smart comes from the fact they're good at managing people. Yep. And they're good at listening, and they're good at communicating, they're good at providing the right tasks, the right KPIs. They're good at processing at the right time and going and having discussions with people when they need their pep talk. They're good at putting their arms around them when they need that extra support and just comfort to say, okay, you're having a bad day, let's go again tomorrow.
Yeah.
But also without being smug, but having the ability to stand up and say, actually, it's the old adage we use a lot in sport, there's no I in team. It's the element is that the fact is that as a commodity, as a group of individuals, you're all smart. You all bring different roles and different ideology to the process, but the process of managing it is the smart thing in there. And actually having people around you who are smarter than you means that you are become more successful. And you look at that around politics, you look about economics, you're not getting into the American politics, but you've got a man who thinks he's smart, but he's surrounded by very smart people. And that's the differential I'm getting at here. And I just really thought it was a quite unique little tip, of which to say that some of those people listening, just look at your teams. You'll know who the smart people in your teams are. But those smart people, as I go back to, they're smart because they're humble as well. They understand processes, they understand where they sit. And a lot of them, I look at the teams I work within, and I work who work with me, and there's some really, really intelligent people in those teams. But there's also some of those same people do not want responsibility because they fear responsibility. And they're very happy for people like myself to take on that responsibility and to put it and to take the weight of it. And then that in itself is where we all are unique in different ways. And that goes back to change itself, is that some of us have to change, some of us don't want to change, but that's an individual's choice.
Yeah, good tip.
Right, do you want to sum up, Damon, and then say?
Well, as always, it's always thankful for any listeners that we have. We know how important and precious time is, so we're grateful for that. We're always open to guest ideas and future questions, and throwing it out there if anybody's got a top tip they want to share with us. We're always open to that. We'd love any feedback, good or bad, preferably good. Looking forward to the next one. Feel the pain, Mark, trying to organise three people's diaries to do a podcast. You wouldn't think it was that hard, but onwards and upwards. But I think another good podcast. I think we're growing into them, which is good.
I think for me, if you like what you've heard, we've now got this on YouTube. If you press the like button, if you want to be connected and get, if you press the subscribe button, that means when we've got any little shorts, which we are planning to do in the not too distant. Damon always puts some shorts on, especially on the tips, and so that you'll get those to share. The idea is that you can share within your teams and your groups of people as well. In July, we are going to do a Two Geezers, but slightly different because we're at a conference. We're doing a conference, so we're going to take the questions to the delegates. But what we're not going to do it as live. We're going to do it as an edited podcast. Hopefully, with some support from our wonderful team. But hopefully as well, it will be something different, something more to talk about, and hopefully you'll enjoy that as well.
And I think it's important to bring up those bits about sharing. I'm really looking for the conference as well. But if you're not already, please do follow Mark, the LinCA Care Association, and myself on LinkedIn. Not just to say follow us, but we quite often, because of the groups that we're in, come across lots of really useful information that we either repost or like, and it comes up in people's feeds. There's some really good stuff out there, and it's hard sometimes to keep on top of everything and know everything. But I found it useful where I've saved a post, and then it'll come in conversation. It's like, oh, I've got something on that, and I can go back and find it easily. But it just builds up that network of information and data and knowledge. So
fantastic. Right, Damon?
Just one last little thing, because I know we always mention it and we do put it in the show notes, but this is Mark and I's own personal thoughts. Although we work for Lincolnshire Care Association and Caring Links, these are our thoughts, not, to be kept separate.
Just to make sure you get our disclaimers in.
Yeah, just in case. Yeah, thank you, Mark.
Right. So hopefully next time we will have a guest.
Yeah.
If not, we will be doing this again.
Yeah, we won't leave it so long.
All right then.
Right, cheers, mate.
Cheers, bye.
Bye.